Well, to this now, Russia has claimed victory in the race to find the COVID-19 vaccine. President Vladimir Putin claims the country has developed one. It has not yet completed its final trials. However, President Putin says that the vaccine is completely safe and that one of his daughters actually used the vaccine. But some experts, of course, have raised concerns. And now Professor of Vaccinology at Wits University, that is Professor Shabir Madhi, joins me now to have this discussion, of course, about what's his thoughts around, this particular vaccine. Prof, thank you so much for your time and welcome to ENCA. I mean, I suppose the world doesn't know whether to be excited or to be wary. What do we do? Do we get excited and celebrate the speed at which we've heard the announcement from President Putin around this vaccine, or do we ask more questions around its safety?
Good morning to you. So I think we need to be really concerned that major countries such as Russia would rush ahead and register a vaccine which simply hasn't gone through the correct scientific scrutiny to determine, firstly, whether it's safe, and secondly, whether it actually protects against COVID-19. In my own mind, I think it's a highly irresponsible thing to do, and it could be extremely damaging to the broader field of trying to develop a COVID-19 vaccine that actually is safe and does protect people. Because if something goes wrong once this vaccine is deployed into the population, that could have severe repercussions in terms of other COVID-19 vaccines, which might well protect against disease and be safe.
So, Prof, at this stage, you're saying that we do not have enough information or data to completely and, fully evaluate the efficiency of this vaccine. That's what you're saying?
Correct. So when we do evaluations of vaccine, after it's gone through animal model studies, we got different stages in humans, what we call phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. And over those different phases, you're trying to address different questions. The Russians basically have done the equivalent of a phase 1 study, which really is a limited number of study. They've in fact only included about 38 participants in the study. And it really tells you whether the vaccine has any severe side effects which are very common, as well as what type of immune response the vaccine actually induces. But it tells you absolutely nothing about whether the vaccine actually protects against COVID-19. To be able to address that question, you need to do additional studies, which are phase 2 and phase 3 studies. And those studies would enroll anything between 2,000 up to 30,000, 60,000 participants. So to be able to actually license a vaccine where it's just been evaluated in a handful of individuals, it's unheard of in terms of past vaccines that have been licensed.
Yeah, Professor Madhi, then what informs the president of Russia, President Vladimir Putin, to go on, a global stage and announce, or rather promise, that this particular vaccine will then provide some sort of, sustainable immunity? I mean, he went to the extent of saying that even one of his daughters had utilized this particular vaccine.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's absolutely no scientific basis to make such a claim. Unless the vaccine has actually gone through the correct clinical development and evaluation to see whether it is safe and actually protects against COVID-19. In the instance of this particular vaccine, you can't make such a claim. There are other vaccines where you do know what sort of immune response the vaccine needs to induce to be able to protect against disease. In the case of COVID-19, unfortunately, we're not there. We don't know exactly what type of immunity needs to be induced to protect against COVID-19. So in this particular instance, unfortunately, it's really trying to short-circuit the system. And like I said, it could have potential severe consequences, negative consequences.
Right. I mean, that expected date, he did mention there that it could be October in terms of its release date. Have you heard anything from the World Health Organization as to whether or not they may halt that particular release date, of course, pending further investigation around the safety and efficiency of this vaccine?
So the World Health Organization isn't able to stop regulatory authorities from licensing a vaccine. But there is a process at the World Health Organization which is known as a pre-qualification process, which is what the company manufacturer would need to go through before the World Health Organization will make a recommendation for the use of that vaccine. And that recommendation is based on the scientific evidence in terms of the safety as well as the efficacy of the vaccine. Yesterday, the WHO actually indicated that they will be evaluating the vaccine, but it's unlikely that this vaccine will be pre-qualified by the WHO because it simply doesn't have the scientific evidence to indicate that it would actually protect against COVID-19 or that in fact it is safe at all.
Yeah, and Professor Madhi, just on a separate but slightly related issue here around COVID-19 and the announcement of, just different treatments that I suppose people can just be informed about. I'd like to know, rather I'm curious, do you know anything about the cold guard spray and what it does? We understand from information we've gathered right here on ENCA and, conversation we just had today that it deactivates SARS-CoV-2 by 98.3% in just over 20 minutes.
Yeah, look, so I'm not familiar with this particular product, but there's a number of other products that sort of make the same claim. And I'm not too sure exactly what the indication or what the indication for use would be in terms of whether it's something that's going to be used in the environment, because it's certainly not going to be something that's going to be used by humans in terms of either being ingested or being injected, because, again, it would need to go through those sort of clinical studies. So unfortunately, I'm not familiar with this particular product, but to be honest, there's a number of these products that are being touted as being cures or as being effective in terms of containing the survival of COVID-19, of the virus itself, much of which has not been tested.
Yeah, and just before I let you go then, Professor Madhi, in terms of the confirmed number of cases we're seeing in the country, but also from around the world, in terms of data analysis, what are you finding there medically?
Okay, so I think South Africa is sort of on a downward trajectory, but it actually differs between provinces. So the Western Cape and Gauteng have peaked, and in fact the Western Cape is very much on a downward trajectory. The Eastern Cape has also peaked, but the Eastern Cape and Gauteng are still at a relatively high level, and hopefully in the next week or two they'll start coming down. But for other provinces in South Africa, unfortunately, we're still going to see an increase in terms of number of infections. One of the challenges that we face at the moment in terms of the absolute number of cases that are being reported is what has occurred over the past 2 weeks or so, is that there's been a decline in terms of the number of individuals that are being tested. So that on its own might not necessarily be the reason why the numbers have dropped so precipitously, but it has certainly contributed to a decrease in terms of the day-to-day numbers that are being reported. So we probably need to get to a more steady state in terms of the number of individuals that are tested on a daily basis to be able to make an informed assessment as to exactly where we're heading. But like I said, for Gauteng, Eastern Cape, we probably have peaked and will start probably coming down in terms of hospitalization rates as well as the number of people that die. And the Western Cape, they're certainly on a downward trajectory, which is really great news.
All right, I appreciate your time this morning talking to us, Professor of Vaccinology at Wits University. That's Professor Shabir Madhi, who has just joined us.